Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 23rd of May of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And the most important and the most interesting updates are coming from Belgorod area. As you know, the Russians, after the Ukrainians crossed the border, crossed another big red line, and after the Ukrainians managed to establish the bridgehead on the territory of Russian Federation, launched their counter-terrorist operation. And during the previous day, the Russians managed to repulse the Ukrainians' attacks in the vicinity of Graivorun, this settlement, and furthermore they managed to complete the clearing operation in Goropodol, and they managed to complete the clearing operation in Glotova. But as a result of yesterday's clashes, from the other side, the Ukrainians complete the creation of the small bridgehead in the vicinity of small settlement Kozinka, and this is the situation by the end of the previous day. If you remember, one more time I'm going to show you this video how everything started. This is the convoys of Ukrainian forces who were prepared before the beginning of that operation, and this morning the Ukrainian commanders, the Ukrainian military authorities took a decision to send more reserves, and the Russians published another video from the border detachment, from the borders checkpoint. In this area, as you can see, there are Ukrainian forces who have captured this territory. Currently, based on this video, they're preparing and making some kind of fortifications, some positions. As you can see, there are a lot of units, forces were moved in this area. Probably they're receiving some orders and preparing themselves before upcoming day. As soon as they came, the Russians launched another wave of counter-terrorist operation, and they were trying to push the Ukrainians back from this area. And somewhere at noontime, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation published their own report about the situation in Belgorod. And based on that report, as a result of clearing operation, as a result of counter-terrorist operation, the Ukrainians lost 70 soldiers and 9 armored vehicles. Furthermore, the Russians published video confirmation of those attacks, of those losses. And the Russians were using all types of weapons they have. They were using guided bombs, they were using helicopters, they were using artillery attacks, the Russians were using drones and so on. And as you can see currently on the screen, you can see the results of those counter-terrorist operation, of those attacks. And as we discussed, the Ukrainians were, and according to the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, the Ukrainians were forced to leave this bridgehead and to step back on the Ukrainian territory. So somewhere by 7 p.m. Of the local time, the Ukrainians lost the entire bridgehead and were forced to step back. So let's update this map, showing the real situation in this area. Furthermore, I'll remind you one more time that at the very beginning the Ukrainians were using, and there were around 500 soldiers, something around 1 battalion in this area, and as a result they lost a little bit less than 20% of the entire amount of these forces. But this is not the final update that we received from this area. Many Western sources and Ukrainian sources started some kind of media war, media things from their side, and they were saying that as a result of during the day they managed to cross the border, not just in this area. For example, the Ukrainians were saying that as a result of fightings and storming operation, they managed to cross the border and to enter a small settlement by the name of Paros, this one. So let's update this map based according to information we have. Furthermore, the Ukrainians also crossed the border a little bit to the east from the main bridgehead in the settlements of Gorkovskoy, this one, and a little bit further to the east in the vicinity of the settlements Bagun Gorodok and Shetinovka. So these were also Ukrainians' bridgeheads that they managed to capture, or at least they managed to enter during the day. But the Russians launched effective counter-offensive, counter-terrorist operation, and during the day, during the clearing operation on the main bridgehead, the Russians sent some reinforcements to every single Ukrainian position, and as a result of clearing operation, they managed to force the Ukrainians to step back from every single bridgehead that they managed to capture during the day. And by the 7 p.m. of the local time, the Russians stabilized the entire entire situation in Belgorod and return control over the border, and published video and photo confirmations from this border checkpoint. During the previous night, the Ukrainians launched a massive drone attack above this territory, and one of the attacks went in direction of Belgorod, and as a result of that attack, the Ukrainian drone had dropped the explosive device at headquarters of FSB in Belgorod region. The Russians haven't provided us any information about the losses or about the casualties as a result of that attack. One more time, I'll remind you that this operation was completely prepared by the Ukrainian intelligence and Ukrainian special forces under control of the head of that service, General Kirill Budanov. He is the head of the main Directorate of Intelligence, and this entire operation was prepared by him. Furthermore, recently he reported that the Ukrainians were going to continue using such a method of attacks, and I believe and I expect that within the next months we are going to see more attempts from the Ukrainian side to cross the border and to make panic and attacks along the border, trying to create some kind of buffer zone between Ukraine and the territory of Russian Federation. One more time, the main forces that took place in that operation were Free Russian Regiment, it's the part of Russian Democratic Republic forces, and Russian Volunteer Corps, the same forces. Furthermore, today we receive another update that Ukrainians took a decision to send reserves and to send special unit Kraken to the border, so probably those forces of that unit also took part in that entire operation. Furthermore, the Russian intelligence reported that when talking about the main bridgehead, there were around 500 soldiers during the day, and when talking about the bridgehead a little bit to the east that the Ukrainians were trying to develop, there were around 2,000 soldiers during the day. But as you can see, currently the Ukrainians left the Russian territory, and we'll see what is going to be next. And that's it about the situation with Belgorod. Now let's go to the front lines and let's talk about the situation on the ground. And first we're going to discuss the Kupiansk front line. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of active and successful storming operation, the Russians managed to develop their bridgehead in the vicinity of a small settlement Masyutovka. This one, they haven't provided us any information about the direction of attack of those forces, so I'm drawing this arrow softly just to show possible direction of those forces. But this is a very interesting region because the Russians are saying, and most of the deployment maps and some sources are saying, that this area was deployed another private military campaign by the name of Storm Z. So it's a Russian PMC, and this Russian PMC, according to some sources, belongs to the head of Russian Ministry of Defense, Shoigu. So as we can see, after a great success of Wagner's, the Russians take a decision to create a lot of alternatives to Wagner's, and probably this Storm Z squad is some kind of alternative to the Wagner's, because this Storm Z squad also consists of ex-prisoners and ex-officers of the Ministry of Defense, and probably these days it was some kind of test in combat of that squad, of that unit. And because based on the report that we received from Ministry of Defense, I believe that this squad was pretty successful, and I believe that the Russians will try to develop this squad and types of this PMC in the future. Now let's move further to the south, and currently we are moving to the Liman Frontline. There are no changes on Liman Frontline, just the regular artillery duels, and the Russians reported that as a result of fierce fightings, the losses were around 65 soldiers and 6 armored vehicles, including 1 tank from the Ukrainian side. As you can see, nothing extraordinary, no changes and so on. Interesting updates are coming from Siversk bridgehead. The Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of artillery attack, the Ukrainians lost another ammo depot of 60th Mechanized Brigade in the vicinity of Verkhnyokamyanska. This is like some kind of a very tough nut from the Ukrainian side that the Russians are trying to crack for the previous months, and currently there are still heavy clashes in Bilogorovka, in Verkhneykamyanska, but all these territories under secure, under protection, under the lock of 54th Mechanized Brigade, 81st and 10 Mountain Assault Brigade. Now we are moving to the Bakhmut. We received some updates from this area as well. The Russians continue clearing and demining operation in Bakhmut. Currently they're trying to clean the town from the dead bodies of the Ukrainian soldiers and the Russian soldiers, but the Russians are saying that Ukrainians continue endless attempts to attack this town with artillery, and of course these attacks reduce the Russians' possibilities to clear the town and so on. From the Russian side, they will report that as a result of artillery attack they managed to destroy the ammo depot of 64th Mechanized Brigade in the settlement by the name of Stupachki. As you remember, there are 2 days left, and according to the official announcement of Prigozhin, the head of Wagner's, they will leave Bakhmut very soon, so we'll see this. Very interesting updates are coming from the south area, from Donetsk front line. For example, today the Russians reported about attack against the headquarters of the 24th Mechanized Brigade. They have destroyed these headquarters. They haven't provided us any interesting numbers. I believe we're going to see them later. And very interesting updates are coming from Avdiivka bridgehead. The Russians reported that they continue advancing from Krasnogorovka, Novobakhmutovka in direction of Novokalinovo. Probably they're trying to develop this bridgehead. Probably they're trying to capture these settlements that located on the hill and to cut the Ukrainians' supply and support that currently goes from Achertina. So this is the main direction of the Russian attack. Furthermore, the Russians reported that they managed to destroy 2 fuel depots in Avdiivka, and probably those fuel depots belong to 110th Mechanized Brigade. Furthermore, the Russians published the video confirmation of usage of guided bombs in the 9th block of Avdiivka, this one. And you see not the Bakhmut. This is not Bakhmut, this is Avdiivka, and these photos and videos from Avdiivka. As you can see, most of the buildings in that block are ruined. This is another high-rise buildings area that the Russians need to clear before they are able to move further and to enter with their storm squads inside of the town. So probably we see the first, or maybe not the first, but some steps to continue encirclement and storming operation of this fortress, another fortress in Ukraine, Avdiivka Fortress. Very interesting updates are coming from the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. From this area, they reported as a result of fierce fightings, the level of losses of Ukrainians were on the level of 375 soldiers for the previous 24 hours and 11 armored vehicles, including 2 tanks. As you can see, the level are very high, and probably of course, it's up to you to believe or not these numbers. We're just using these numbers to understand and to analyze where, according to the Ministry of Defense, is the most fierce and the most clashes, and where is the most active front line. And based on that report, Donetsk still has the first position in the list, and all these video and photo confirmations probably show us the real direction and where exactly most of those losses took place. Very interesting updates are coming from South Donetsk area. As you know, today the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, with an official visit, took a decision to visit the South Donetsk area. He was in Kurachovo, at least most of the sources and mappers took it from based on the the video and geolocation thing that he visited this town, Kurachovo. He brought a lot of awards, a lot of medals, and he talked a lot about the Ukraine, about the soldiers, he awarded soldiers with some kind of awards and so on. And of course, this is a very bad sign for the Ukrainians, because if you remember, every time Zelensky visits the front line, soon this front line collapse. And that situation we could see in Bakhmut, but of course also Zelensky visited Chasov Yar, and this town still hasn't fallen. But anyway, as you can see, Zelensky still have possibility to go along the front line to get very close to the combat line without even any afraid to be attacked from the Russian side. He's a very risky man, I believe so. Now let's talk about South Donetsk and Zaporozhye area. The Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of fierce fightings, artillery duels, the Ukrainians lost 150 soldiers. It's like 15th or 20th day in a row when we can see a very heavy losses from the Ukrainian side in this area. One more time, it's up to you to believe or not these numbers. We're just trying to analyze and to understand where exactly, according to the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, we can find the most fierce fightings. And currently South Donetsk takes the second position in the list of the front lines in Ukraine. Now we are moving to Kherson. There are no changes in this area. No more attempts from the Ukrainian side to cross the Dnieper River. Probably they're preparing such operation, but they will launch this operation a little bit later. And as a result of artillery duels, the Ukrainians lost 20 soldiers in this area. So this area currently is on the 5th position of the front lines, and this is the situation on the ground. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.